Roar Around the Ring is getting ready for the Royal Rumble coming up this weekend in Indianapolis. And who else better to get us ready for it than former WWE referee, now stepping into the podcasting world as well, Jimmy Korderas. How you doing, man?
One of the referees in the first ever Royal Rumble in 1988.
Look at that.
Yeah, there you go.
1988,
Yeah,
the
I
first
just
ever Royal Rumble.
yeah.
You mentioned 22 years in the WWE, right? Like
Mhm.
1987, you went through so many different eras.
Right.
And I think it's safe to say for anybody who watched, especially the peak Attitude Era, maybe, or the early 2000s, they know your name, right? And I feel like I could list plenty of the referees from the early 2000s, probably the entire roster. And I feel like a little bit of that kind of went away where we didn't fully know
Mhm.
the referees as much. And now it seems like it's getting back into that where we know the referees, one by one. How important do you feel that is for whatever company it may be to, present the referees in that way where we know who each one is?
I think it's nice. It's nice to be recognized because the referee's job is to not be, a focal point. You are not the star. You are there to help the talent tell their stories and be the conduit between everybody. But you're also kind of like that middleman that keeps things going, if that
Sure.
makes any kind of sense. But it's kind of like a thankless job at the same time because in my mind, anyways, I feel that a lot of referees don't get the recognition they deserve because you talk to any of the talent from, especially back in the day when we were doing it, they appreciated the role of a referee because some of them will tell you you can have a great match with a so-so referee, and that brings the match down in quality, the overall match in quality, and it has nothing to do with the talent.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you put a referee there that knows what he's doing and does the job well and understands that it's for them,
Yeah.
not for us, for them, they can enhance that match that much more. So it's nice to get the name put out there every once in a while so people go, okay, that's the guy's name that I
Sure.
see every once in a while. But I don't like if they hammer it home. You don't have to keep telling me. We already know who Charles is. You
Yeah,
don't
for
have to tell
sure.
me. Yeah, he's one that stands out. You know what I mean? So it's like I said, it's nice to be recognized, but at the same time, um, you know, they can show. I just didn't like the fact that they kind of ignored it for a while there and made it look like,
They did.
okay, uh, nameless, faceless guy over there in the striped shirt or the blue shirt and the bow tie,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it got to the point again in the early 2000s when I would watch with my dad. We would go through who's the ref for this match, who's the ref for this match, just personally, and we
Mhm.
knew every single time. We knew their name, like you said, it wasn't overdone, but we knew who they were. And you talked about how important the ref is to a match. For those who may not know, what is outside of what we just see on TV and the refing the match? What is the role of a referee before, during the match, of putting that whole thing together and everything going on within the ring and all the action we're seeing?
Well, it's like you said, it starts before the match when you're assigned a match and you get together with the whoever you're assigned to, and you listen to them and you go over stuff and where they would like you to be positioned and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And then if there's certain things that um, maybe you could suggest and say, hey, would it work better for you guys if I was here doing this instead of that?
Yeah.
So it's like a collaborative effort to get the match put together. Obviously, they're putting together, let's say 98% of it, but you're every once in a while your 2% can help add to something.
Sure.
So you're putting that all together, and then contrary to popular opinion, they don't go out there and rehearse the match. I mean, obviously, you can talk things over. You might go out to the ring and kind of say, yeah, this is the corner we'll use for this, that sort of stuff. And then during the match, basically, you're there to make sure that everything falls into place, be the communication between the talent, because when there's separation, obviously they can't tell each other if something comes up, who says, okay, uh, go over there and tell them to do this.
Yeah.
Now you have to creatively find a way to go over there without making it obvious you're going over there and passing a signal, you
Sure.
know? So you have
Yeah.
to do it in the process of like you're doing your job.
Yeah. It's all about making it look real, look legitimate, right? And I
Right,
mean,
right.
the cat's out of the bag. It's all scripted, sure, right? But we don't
Yeah,
need to remind people of that, right? Like we
yeah,
want to make it look
exactly.
as
Exactly.
legitimate as possible.
Yeah, and also you're getting, we have the IFBs that they wear to this day that they pass messages from Gorilla. They'll say, maybe the producer or the agent for the match might suggest something and say, hey, tell them to try this or tell them to try that, along with obviously passing times, because it's, especially for television,
Yeah.
um, not in the Netflix era where they have a little leeway, but
Sure.
on broadcast television, you have to hit your hard times or you get in trouble.
Right.
And then after the match, it's like you go over, you thank everyone for the match, which is customary, and then what I would do is I would say, okay, is everything okay? Is there something I could have done different? Always look for feedback.
Yeah.
Because if you don't look for feedback, if you don't get feedback, then you can't grow. And anybody who stops and says, well, I got this. I know it all. Yeah, guess what? Step back because
Yep.
you're always learning, you're always being a sponge. You never know everything.
Yes. And the best of the best realize that. And that's what makes them the best of the best and continue to get better from there. Let's talk about you, though, in your career. Again, we mentioned it over 20 years in the WWE. You mentioned it yourself, the first ever Royal Rumble way back in 1988. And
Mhm.
I mean, so what was the path for you to decide to go this route of being a referee? Kind of talk about the passion you had for the industry and the want to get in and how you made it there.
Well, it's funny because I didn't say, what, my goal is to set out to be a referee.
Yeah.
It wasn't that. I loved wrestling because growing up here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you mention any city in Canada, you have to mention the province and the country as well. Thank you, Bret Hart from
Right.
Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Yeah. Well, plenty. Yeah.
But,
Winnipeg, Manitoba, Chris Jericho. Yeah. We
oh,
had a few.
pardon me. But if I'm not mistaken, you're not too far from me here. You're in Michigan, right?
Yes, you are correct. Yep.
Yeah.
I
So,
actually end up in Toronto a few times a year as well. So,
oh, nice.
yep. Yep.
So basically, when I was younger, growing up in the territory days, before WWE took over the Canadian office, which was Maple Leaf Wrestling,
Yeah.
I was a huge fan. I mean, I started as a kid watching on television, Saturday nights here in Canada or Sunday, or hockey night in Canada. But,
Yep.
after hockey, there was, I want to say it was All-Star Wrestling from Vancouver, of all things, were on our television. We got it up here.
Yeah.
We had Maple Leaf Wrestling. We used to get Mid-Atlantic Wrestling from the Buffalo affiliates, WWF Wrestling from one of the Buffalo affiliates. We got Calgary Stampede Wrestling. We got International from Montreal. We got uh, AWA on one of the other, and it was like all day long wrestling
Yeah.
on Saturdays. And they'd tell me go out and play, and I'm like, nope, I'm staying home and watching wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of my friends did too. And then when I got old enough to go down, I had what was the equivalent of season tickets. I went to the office and I said, listen, I come to every show. Is it possible to get the same two seats for every show?
Nice.
So Maple Leaf Gardens used to have this ramp that used to go from the dressing room to the ring. It was level, one of the first places to have it. It was very unique. And I was sitting second row ringside right beside that ramp every 3 weeks because they would run Toronto every 3 weeks back then.
Yeah.
And I'd bring my camera with me and I'd take pictures of the guys and I'd come back the next show and I'd sell my pictures
Okay.
for $2 a pop, trying to make some money so I could fuel
Sure.
my habit, my wrestling habit, pay for
Sure.
it. And I got caught by the guy who worked for Jack Tunney by the name of Elio Zarlenga. He basically said, you can't do this. And I said, what are you talking about? What do you mean I can't do this? He says, well, it's copyright infringement. You're selling pictures and stuff. And I'm like, and you are? He told me who he was. I went, uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
Oh God.
He says, you don't look like a bad guy. Just don't do it right outside the building where everybody can see you. You
Yeah.
know, just shuffle on down a bit. And we became friends. And he said, you know what? I'll introduce you to Jack Tunney and maybe you can help me out. He used to take the pictures for the program, the photographer.
Yeah.
So maybe you can be my assistant. And that way you can get in there and take pictures, but you can't sell them. I said, okay, that's cool. And I met Jack and he said, well, we don't need another photographer. We'll find something for the kid to do. And I was the guy who ran around whatever they needed done.
Sure.
Jack would hand me the keys to his Cadillac and say, go up to the airport Marriott and pick up so-and-so,
Yeah.
pick up a Hogan, Andre. And I'm like, holy, I don't know what the language parameters are here, but
No, go for it.
I
You
was
are
like,
good.
no, I was like, holy shit, I'm going to go pick up Andre the Giant. This is crazy. And then I ended up getting to know Pat Patterson and Pat said to Jack after a little while of doing this, he says, we got the kid here. He's running all these errands for us. He's waiting around to do stuff. He says, why don't we use him during the show? We'll make him a referee. And Jack said, well, do you want to smarten the kid up? And Pat says, Jack, he's hanging out in the locker room with the guys. He kind of has an idea what's going on here.
Right.
So why don't we use them? So Pat told me to get the old black sneakers, black pants, blue shirt, black bow tie, carry it with me all the time. And then eventually at a house show here in Newmarket, Ontario, Chief Jay Strongbow says to me, he says, Jimmy, you got your ref gear with you? And I said, yes, Chief, I do. He says, put it on your ref tonight, just like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then the rest led into what was a 20 plus career in the business and with WWE specifically. And
Mhm.
honestly, you ended up through a lot of big eras, of course, the Attitude Era, but all the way through the Ruthless Aggression Era and all the way in the mid 2000s, mid to late 2000s. Talk about how, of course, we watched as fans and how things changed and how the product and the company grew. But from behind the scenes, how did the locker room change from one era to the next? What was the biggest difference from maybe the Attitude Era to the Ruthless Aggression from early on, from at least that point of view? And we saw it from fans, but from your point of view behind the scenes, what was the
Mhm.
biggest difference from one era to the next, do you think?
The biggest difference is moving forward. From when I first started, obviously, the guys were a little more closed when it came to being in public. You know, you tried to keep that aura of kayfabe still
Sure.
existed back then, so you didn't want people to see like, you know, Greg Valentine and Ric Flair would have this blood feud for an hour, and then all of a sudden the next morning you go down and see them having breakfast together at the
Right.
hotel. It kind of kind of kills the aura, right?
Sure, sure.
But as far as the atmosphere backstage, obviously there were the occasional conflicts back and forth, but that's pretty much anywhere. You're going to get that anywhere.
Yeah.
And especially in a business like this where egos can get easily, uh, I don't want to say damaged, but easily hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so you get the occasional scuffle and stuff like that. That started cooling off as the era started to progress and guys started to work together. But then again, you did have some people who pushed buttons, and you got a guy like, for example, I'll say it, Shawn Michaels. He'll admit it himself. He wasn't a nice guy back then. He used to push
Sure.
people's buttons.
Sure.
Brett in particular. So stuff like that. I don't want to say it divided the locker room, but it had people kind of going, I'll just keep to myself over here and
Sure.
stay out of the way and that sort of thing. But as time went on, especially with the ups and downs and the peaks and valleys of the business, because you have your good periods, your bad periods, and that sort of thing. During the good periods, everybody was good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody's like, okay, this is good. Everybody's making a good paycheck.
Right.
We're all good here. And even guys who were like, oh, I should be in a top spot, were kind of like, all right, but it's still pretty good.
Right. We'll take it.
Kind of suck it up. We'll take it for now, and
Yep.
time will come. And then when things take a dip, unfortunately, that's when people start to get a little bit boo-boo faced
Sure.
and they want stuff. But again, that's another thing that happens everywhere. And then as things got towards the end of where I was there, it was like we had the Raw and SmackDown split rosters.
Yep. Yep.
Um, the SmackDown roster that I was on was really good roster. Everybody was pretty much on the same page, with the odd, character out there who probably thought, you know what, I'm not getting what I think I deserve as far as a push, as far as this, but for the most part, we were all on the same page. Everybody, we had a good time with each other because we were on the road with each other so much. I mean, there'd be days where we'd have the occasional day off and head out and find a golf course and play golf
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff, and find places to play cards or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So the camaraderie does exist, and I think it's even more so today because I recently went to visit when they were in town here in Toronto for
Yeah.
Money in the Bank not too long ago, and you could just feel a different atmosphere today. Everybody's like clowning around, having fun. It's a stark difference. It's not as cutthroat as when I first started, and as the years went on, it got less so, and then now today, everybody seems to be. And again, you'll have the occasional guy who says, "Man, this isn't for me," but
Sure.
again,
Uh,
you'll get that everywhere.
Yeah. Anywhere and everywhere with that. I want to touch on a few things that you had mentioned during that. And the first being the kayfabe kind of being protected. Of course, social media has kind of changed that, but the industry is starting to change with that and incorporating social media. How do you feel the industry has handled social media and sometimes blurring the lines and sometimes keeping them separate? in terms of using it on air for the product, since fans have a little more of a look behind the scenes than they did, as you mentioned, 20 plus years ago.
It's like you said, the fans nowadays are a lot smarter, and the curtain has been peeled back, maybe a little too much, maybe so, but at the same
Sure.
time, like I said, fans are smarter, so you don't want to insult their intelligence too much either. They kind of know what's going on. You kind of know what's going on there,
Yeah.
Justin. I think, but at the same time, the problem I think they have though is sometimes fans, and I include myself in that as well, because I'm still a fan.
Oh, for sure.
I forget to be that fan, just to sit back, relax, enjoy, instead of being over analytical.
Yep.
But part of my what I do now is to analyze certain things and break them down and say, I like the way this went because this is how they did it. I didn't like how this worked out because in my mind, it should have looked more like this.
Yeah.
Again, that's my opinion. So sometimes it's tough for me to take those analytic glasses off and just
Yeah.
sit back and be a fan. And I think that's the biggest problem they face today is they are trying to stop insulting people's intelligence, but
Yeah.
at the same time, you want to leave that a little bit of aura of that suspension of disbelief, and that's the hard thing to do nowadays, especially.
Yeah. Within everything that you talked about, and one of the biggest, of course, when the Attitude Era kind of came and went, you mentioned the brand split as well. I kind of want to give, and as we kind of go through your career and kind of the biggest moments throughout it and the biggest, eras that you were around for, that being one of them, the brand split with Raw and SmackDown and split rosters. Two questions with that. First off, what was the kind of, behind the scenes reaction to that? It was very different than how WWE, WWF have been handled up until that point. But also, what about it do you think made it a little more time for it to settle into the success that it had? It was a little odd at first until it finally found its groove and got going, through maybe 2002 to 2003 or so. So what was the reaction like, and what was it that, made the success kind of grow from the split brands?
It's very interesting because, guys weren't sure where they were going,
Yeah.
whether they were going to be Raw or SmackDown, and they did that big show, the first one ever, where everybody's seated in a room, and then they did the draws, and they wanted to get everybody's reaction and that sort of thing. I think a lot of guys, because you develop certain relationships there where guys become like road buddies,
Yeah.
road partners. There'll be a group of 3 or 4 guys that would ride together to every town and that sort of thing. And when they got split up, which did in a couple of cases, that kind of now you got to find a new set of buddies
Sure.
to travel and that sort of thing. But I think people were concerned with their spots. Again, that's the biggest thing that everybody worries about is their spot. What's in it for me? Like if we have a brand split, okay, we're going to have 30 guys on this roster, 30 guys on this roster. That means I've only got 2 hours of TV time to try and get an appearance on and get seen on.
Right.
And from a fan's perspective, it kind of felt like, well, I like seeing so and so on my television,
Yeah.
but now I only get to see them once a week instead of twice a week. So, but that went away quick, I think.
Yeah.
I think fans were able to adjust to it actually a lot quicker than they probably anticipated.
Right.
So, but as far as the talent themselves, it took a little getting used to
Sure.
because it also adjusted the schedules. Instead of everybody having to be there for 2 nights of TV, you only had to be there for one, which means everybody had an extra house show
Yeah.
on the night where they were doing TV. Like I'll give you an example for SmackDown example, we would do when they were taping SmackDown on Tuesdays, it would be Saturday house show, Sunday house show, Monday, even though there was Raw live on TV,
Yeah.
we would do a house show usually on a Monday and then tape television on Tuesday.
Wow.
And then
Yeah.
for the Raw guys, they would start on Friday. They would do Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then TV Monday.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean the schedule has lightened up a lot, and compared to what it was back then with live shows and everything in between, they still kind of use the brand split now, although it right. Yes,
What do they call it? That transfer window? Is that
the
what they call
transfer
it?
window, it's like a transfer portal, kind of almost like a college football reference, right?
Right.
Where you have guys going back and forth. And that's kind of how I've felt. I mean, you gave that sound that you gave. I, without any words, I completely agree with you because it feels as if we have a draft or a superstar shakeup or whatever they call it, and then whoever got sent over to Raw is showing up on SmackDown 2 weeks later anyway.
Right.
Do you think they need to just get rid of it altogether at this point, or keep it and just follow the rules of two brands?
I, I, I'm more of the mindset that, you don't have to have a specific Raw superstar, SmackDown superstar. Only the titles need to be, brand specific. You keep
Okay,
the IC title and the World Heavyweight Championship on Raw. You keep the Universal Championship and the United States Championship on SmackDown. And other than that, the stars can be interchangeable depending on the story you tell,
sure,
because that's what matters more.
right.
If there's a reason for somebody like, for example, this past Friday, as we're recording this right now, Damian Priest, welcome to SmackDown. You just because of the transfer window.
Yeah,
If there was a reason for him to go to SmackDown,
right.
like he's come to SmackDown for
Who?
what,
Yeah,
or for who? Yes, like you said, like for who, as opposed to, hey, I'm just kind of come here and see what happens.
right.
See, at least with the Miz, you got a story
Yeah.
where something shady happened with Karrion Kross and the AOP, and he got sent over to SmackDown.
Yeah, with the Wyatt six, and now he wants to, stay away from them. Yes,
Right.
100%.
So,
I'm with you
so
on that.
there's kind of a reason. There's a little bit of a story there, as
Yeah,
opposed to just, hey, look at me, I just showed up on brand whatever.
right. And just because the announcers are letting us know, by the way, this person's on the other show, but here they are tonight. Like,
Mhm.
and if it happened every once in a while, because the original brand split that we're talking about, as a fan watching at home, it almost felt like two different companies because of how much you guys really stayed with it. When
Mhm.
Triple H showed up on SmackDown, it was a
Right.
big deal because he wasn't on SmackDown for what, 4 years or so, and then it felt like someone kind of crossing that line and coming over from another company, right? It felt like a bigger deal. The
Mhm.
brand Survivor Series matches were a bigger deal
And
because of that reason.
there was really a friendly rivalry between the Raw and SmackDown guys.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it existed, and people could say whatever they want, but it was there. It was there. Our
yeah.
show was better than yours this week. No, it wasn't.
Love that, and that translates to TV in terms of the story they're telling with that rivalry between the shows as well. I love that. So something else that was a big deal in terms of that, maybe a year before the brand split, that WrestleMania 17, that so many people talk about as one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time, the peak of the Attitude Era. For anyone behind the scenes, for the day of the show, did everyone know how big of a deal that show was going in terms of what it meant for the industry and the company in that era? Or is that something that maybe you look back on afterwards and realize, man, that was a huge night?
Um, no, there was a buzz going into the night. Everybody knew that this had the potential to be something special. And, sometimes the hype is greater than the actual presentation. But on this night, I think uh, the presentation was bigger than the hype.
Okay.
I don't know if they thought that was going to be it exactly going in, but as the night progressed, everybody said was feeling it. They were going like, "Man, this is magic.
Yeah.
This is incredible night." I mean, you go top to bottom. Try to find a weak spot in that whole night.
100%.
Yeah, it was incredible, and again, blessed to be part of some cool stuff on that one, especially because the TLC match,
Yep.
those guys, Edge, Christian, Hardys, Dudleys, every every time they got in the ring together for that type of match, they outdid the one before.
Yeah. They did it, what, three times within a year in that time, and it never got old, right?
No,
Like the exact same match, basically the exact same style match. And every
mhm.
time it was, one level better than the previous one.
It's because they tried to change things up and they didn't want to do too much of what they did in the one before. And that was a challenge to them. And especially you got each team had their own, strategist.
Sure.
Obviously like the Dudleys, you get someone like a Bubba, and you got Matt putting his 2 cents in, and then Christian is actually brilliant
I
with
believe
coming
it.
up with stuff. He's incredible.
There's a reason why
And
he's still going today, right?
mhm. So every match, like you said, they outdid each other, which was incredible. So that was fun. We almost had an actual issue with the hardcore match because
I'm gonna
once
ask you
again,
about that one.
oh, go yeah, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I mean, you had, what is it, Kane, Big Show, and Raven that night.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta imagine a hardcore match out of any type of style. And we'll get into a few. We got a few special ones at the Royal Rumble. I gotta imagine a hardcore match had to be very interesting to try to put together, and then even more interesting to execute. Talk
Mm-hmm.
about that night and managing that match and what took place during that one.
Well, it was fun because as we were talking over the match, they were walking through the building because at that time, hardcore rules were falls can count anywhere as
Right.
well throughout the building, no DQs, the whole bit. So they're walking through the building trying to find different areas that they could fight in, and they
Yeah.
stumbled upon these golf carts. So they asked the building, "Can we use the golf carts in this match?" They said, "Are you going to destroy them?" They said, "No, no, no. We're just going to use them to."
Oh, totally not.
No, of course not. So the idea was for Raven to jump in one and have Big Show jump on the back and Raven to take off down the back, corridor
Yeah,
of the building backstage with Big Show's feet dragging and
sure.
him dragging him down. The only problem was when Big Show jumped on the back of it, it lifted the front tires off the ground and Raven couldn't steer the darn
Couldn't
thing and he
move.
drove it right into a cage fence there. But if you notice closely, all the power wires were running along there for the show.
Yeah,
All the lighting and everything,
sure.
trussing and all that stuff. And everybody started went, what, gasp, we're going to kill the power to the whole show. What are we going to do? And stuff like that. But luckily he was smart enough to get out and then they ran down the thing. And then I got the ride on the back of a golf
Love
cart
it.
with Kane. So I got chauffeured by Kane for the rest of that match.
Beautiful. I'm sure you never let him forget that the entirety of the rest of both of your careers.
Nope, no. Well, I don't let him forget the fact that he tried to set me on fire as well. So,
That, yeah, there's a lot of there's a few different people he could get that from
mhm,
during his run there with hardcore matches. And you mentioned Falls Count Anywhere. It was a 24/7 thing,
mhm,
which means and you and other refs during that time from what was 99 maybe through '02 or so
right.
uh ended up in some wild places in the arena, in the arena, outside the arena, everywhere. What is the craziest spot you ended up where you had to count the 1, 2, 3 for a hardcore match?
I don't think it was the finish, but I've had to do it in bathrooms where it's fought through the building and they've gone into the public restrooms, and I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Uh, all right, whatever. Uh,
They tell you that ahead of time, or did you just follow them? And are they really going in the restrooms right now?
Now, here's the thing. The one time they did it, it was kind of like they got up there and they were fighting through the concession stand and all that sort of stuff. And I think it was called on the fly because I didn't know it was coming.
Oh,
And I
okay.
was like, okay, do I go in there or do I not go in there? I guess I gotta go in
I
there. What
guess
am I supposed to
I'm
do?
not the referee, right? Like, what am I
Yeah,
gonna do? Just wait outside?
exactly. But one of the fun ones that I got to do was when Crash Holly was the hardcore champion,
Yeah.
24/7 champion. He had made a deal with the APA so he could sleep in their office
Yep, I remember that.
and take a little break. And I snuck in with Mr. Gerald Briscoe, who kind of quietly got the 1, 2, 3 on him while he
Um,
was asleep. That was actually kind of fun.
Led to a great Gerald Briscoe Pat Patterson match at
Hmm.
King of the Ring that time for that hardcore title. Man, they put you through a lot with those hardcore matches, man. They really did.
Oh, and they would tell us too, because a lot of times they do spots and they're on concrete,
Yeah,
and you try to count as they'd tell you, hit that concrete. We want to hear it. It's like they want to almost break your hand. You
sure.
know what I mean? I guess they figured those guys are putting their bodies on the line. You couldn't be bothered to count three and slap the pavement.
Right, right. Like you can put your hand on the line and we'll put our bodies on the line and we'll
Yeah,
kind of compare
exactly.
the two after the match and see how we feel, right?
Right.
So you mentioned and we mentioned you got you watch the product very closely still, of course, podcasting. By the way, Reffing It Up podcast, huge pop radio,
Mhm.
daily on X, hashtag Reffin Rants. I mean, you're all over the place when it comes to analyzing what's going on in the business right now. And I gotta imagine, and you mentioned it's tough to take the analytical glasses off when you're watching. What is something that you're watching from current refs? And by no means, I'm not asking you to call anybody out, but what is something that maybe is a pet peeve in the current refs, or at least in the current product, that you're seeing that maybe, again, that needs to be cleaned up a bit from officials?
Okay. Okay. One that I think is not their fault is, yes, I have been very critical of the AEW officiating.
Sure.
It's not a secret.
Yeah.
It's out there. Some of it does fall on them because they should speak up.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it falls on the talent as well for allowing this to happen and them actually burying their officials
Okay.
by not allowing them to conduct their job correctly, if
Right.
that makes sense. Like if they're going to go fight outside for 2 minutes, which is absolutely ridiculous,
Yeah.
and the official was like, "What am I supposed to do?" And they said, and they're telling him, "You're not going to count. You're not going to count."
Right.
Somebody has to stand up and say, "Listen, you're killing the guy's credibility in there."
Right.
You know what I mean? So if you guys want to fight out there for 2 minutes, the referee could take his time counting.
Yes.
All you have to do is give a couple of warnings when they first go out. What simple, like, hey, get in the ring. Come on, guys, get in here. Let's go. Then you
Right.
start your count. You don't have to count fast. Take your time. When you get to 8, one guy looks up, rolls in the ring, rolls back out. Guess what? Count starts over.
Starts over. Right.
And he
Yeah.
can say, and the referee can just say, "Hey, come on, get back in here. Start it all over again." He doesn't have, you just give him the time.
Right.
It's a simple fix, but they don't even bother with it. So,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of times where certain officials I find try to find the camera,
Okay.
but they should be staying, more discreet.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't like that. Biggest, like, for example, if I see two guys before the bell rings, if two guys are face to face, I can understand why the official would try to keep them separated and stand between them.
Mm-hmm.
After the bell rings, if these guys do a face to face for the hard camera,
Yeah.
last thing I want to see is this.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
big head in the middle of it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That just tells me you're trying to get in the shot.
Yeah. It's not about you at that point. And
Hmm.
to your first point there, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, and that is keeping the credibility of it looking real, right? Again, don't remind us that, this is scripted and they're telling you to do one thing or the other. We all know as wrestling fans, you have a 10 count to get back in the ring. And we need to, keep up with that. Even if you are going to go outside the ring for 2 minutes and do something crazy, break up the count, do something to make it make sense for us.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm with you on that.
And one last thing that I find with officials, and this is across the board, it's not just picking on any group or anything like that,
Yeah.
and I sometimes see Brian Hebner and I, and even Daniel Spencer, who
Yes.
is a lead official with TNA and for OVW. We've had this discussion before, is some referees have a tell for false finishes. And
giving it
people
away.
keep saying, people keep asking, I suppose, he has a tell. What is the tell? I said, I don't want to tell you.
Of course not.
And because if I tell you, you won't be able to unsee it.
Right. You're going to look for it every time.
And it hurts. And for me, it's like, damn, I wish they didn't do that.
Sure.
But maybe somebody didn't notice it, and that's fine.
Right.
But this is coming from me who tried so hard not to be that guy, to change my cadence when it wasn't the finish, and
right.
all of a sudden I speed up my count at the finish or slow it down at the finish or whatever the case may be. When I see those things, it's like, darn. I'll give you a little story. We used to do the show up here in Canada called Aftermath, which aired prior to WWE television up here, and we went to SummerSlam here in Toronto in 2019. So we were there. We did some interviews and stuff like that, and we went out to sit in the crowd during the matches, right on the hard camera side, sitting beside the hard camera. I sit beside the producer, our producer James Ladd, and we're watching a match. I won't tell you who the referee is.
Okay.
Don't want to throw him under the bus.
Sure.
But during the match, here comes a near fall, and he looked and goes, "Ooh," he goes, "I thought that was it." He looked at me and goes, "You didn't even flinch." I said, "Yeah, I knew that wasn't the finish." He goes, "Well, how'd you know?" I said, "I just knew." He says, "Well, you know what the finish of the match is." I said, "No, I don't know the finish. I'm not there. I don't know what the
I don't work
is.
there anyway. Yeah.
But I knew it wasn't the finish." He says, "How'd you know?" I don't want to tell you. Okay, so here it comes again. Nice little false finish. He goes, "You didn't flinch again?" I said, "No, because I know that's not it." He says, "How do you know?" I said, "The referee has a tell." He says, "Well, what's the tell?" I said, "I'm not going to tell you
Oh,
because listen, if I tell you, you won't be able to unsee it. And guess what? It ruins everything. It
for
ruins the
sure.
magic." He goes, "No, no, no, just tell me, just tell me." I said, "Okay, I'll tell you. I'm warning you right now. If I tell you, you're not going to see." So I explained to him what it was. And then he goes, "Oh, you're right. Damn it. I can't unsee it now." I said, "See what I mean? That's why,
Yeah,
you know, it's like it's like when you go to see a magic trick, right? They're not making the elephant disappear,
for sure.
but if you see a little glimpse of how it's done, now it's like, oh man.
It ruins, yeah, it ruins the show, right? It's the
Right.
ruins the point. It
Hmm.
takes it away. I've always thought that too, and I couldn't even tell you what the tell was, but I feel like it's on the announce team too. And again, this is just
Oh.
across the board.
Hmm.
There's a tell when it comes to a false finish to the finish, and when it's not done right by the announce team, not even looking at the official or either of the wrestlers, just listening to the announce team, you can tell sometimes if it's not done well, it's
Hmm.
not the finish.
Oh, of course. The biggest tell for me, especially in a championship match,
Okay.
is when let's say the heel is the champion, the baby faces got the heel pinned after a big move or what looked like his finish.
Sure.
We have a new champion. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, we have a new. Guess what? We never have a new champion.
And they're
Every
saying it
time,
before they even they got the pin in.
yeah, it's like Bobby Heenan stooging off that Hogan was the third man back in the day. Is he the third man? I'm like, why would he say it now?
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. And that's kind of been the tell that I've noticed sometimes. And again, it's just across the board. It's not consistent from anyone specifically, but yeah, I feel like the announcers, and then you mentioned the ref as well. It all goes back to just keeping that real feel.
Mhm.
And wrestling fans, especially because we talked about the Attitude Era, that's kind of, sparked the business into the next level. And then it's continued to rise for the last 20 years. So
Mhm.
fans who have been watching since then, they're smart, right? They
Yeah.
learn the business as they continue to watch, especially the
Mhm.
hardcore fans. So you need to, keep those secrets safe to keep the product interesting, because when you have, Joe Schmo watching at home who can call out the tell or whatever it
Mhm.
may be,
Right.
it takes away from the magic of the business and the magic
Right.
of that match.
And on that, now that we've talked about that, I do have to give his flowers. Rod Zapata, if you saw the match between Gunther and Jey Uso at Saturday night's main event,
Yes. Yep.
those false finishes,
Great.
everybody bit.
Yes.
Everybody thought, oh, they thought it was it. They thought it was Jay's time. And there's a difference when you're programmed to say, oh, you know, I thought that was it. Oh, when you're programmed to react like that,
Right.
they genuinely thought that was it.
Sure.
And a lot of that goes to Rod because he did a heck of a job of not giving it away.
Right. It's important. It's so important, especially because social media, because wrestling has been at the level it's at for a while and now growing even more. Fans get it, right? Fans get the
Mhm.
business. Now there's so many different companies and independent companies where, fans can continue to watch and learn the business. So it's very important to kind of keep that, magic alive and keep
Mhm.
those secrets safe
Right.
and keep those moments special, right?
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
mean, see, I mean, we talk about dirt sheets, whatever it may be.
Mm.
I mean, secrets and moments are so hard to keep, under the wraps, right? Like, it's important to try to keep those moments special.
Right.
And you shouted out one current official, and I gotta bring up something when it comes to refs, right? And we don't see it as much in today's world, but we saw it a lot in your world, and that is ref bumps.
Hmm.
So talk about the magic behind that. How, like, because you're not a trained wrestler,
Right.
right? So what was the thought process, the conversation ahead of time when you had to take a bump? And is there a bump that you took that maybe sticks out to you that didn't feel the best, or maybe the biggest or hardest bump you've taken in your career?
Well, here's the thing. A lot of us have trained a little bit.
Okay.
Not to have a match per se, but learn to take a bump so you can land properly, learn how to tuck your head, flat back, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, my philosophy and a lot of other guys' philosophy is that if a referee takes a bump and he flat backs, looks like he's taking a bump, like a wrestler would take a bump,
Sure.
then he looks like someone trained to take a bump, as opposed to being an official who is not quote unquote a wrestler. Therefore, it should not look like a bump that you see in a match.
Yeah.
It should a little, and it the challenge is to make that bump look legit without really hurting yourself because you're not trying to land as safely as possible. You're
Right.
trying to land safely, but in a different manner than just like a regular flatback, if that makes sense. So
Yeah. So you're intentionally trying to make it look like you don't know how to take it,
yes,
right?
yes,
Okay. So you want to
and
make it, yeah. So because in again, keeping it kayfabe real,
mhm,
refs aren't wrestlers, so they shouldn't know how to take it, right?
right,
Okay.
exactly. That's the philosophy behind it. And as far as hardest ones, I've taken a few hard ones. Um, let's see, I've knocked myself out at WrestleMania 4.
Wow.
Um, um, Poor Jimmy Hart thought he did it, but he didn't do it. I did it to myself. It was Honky Tonk Man versus Brutus Beefcake, and
Okay.
Beefcake had Honky in the sleeper hold. Jimmy Hart pops on the apron. I go over to try and get him to jump down, and when I turn around, he waffles me with the megaphone. I face plant down on the canvas, but the problem was when I went down, I put my hands down to brace myself. My hand shot out, my chin
Yeah. Went.
at the sweet spot,
Yep.
and it was lights out
Wow.
completely. Uh,
Wow.
Whatever happened after that in the match, it ended up supposed to be a DQ, but at the same time, well, it just the finish worked out kind of the result they wanted, but not the way they
For
wanted
sure.
it.
Sure. I
But
mean, when the ref goes out, you
um,
got to figure something out.
yeah, other hard. Oh, fractured my sternum in a match with JBL and Rey Mysterio. Believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, the bone here, the breastbone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, did a spot where JBL was trying to pull the corner pad off the corner. I catch him, I get him, tell him to get lost, and I try to readjust the pad. He
Yeah.
takes Rey Mysterio, shoots him freaking 900 miles an hour into me. And what you're supposed to do is leave a little space
Okay.
between the pad and your so you can absorb the impact.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was leaning right up against it when he shot him in, so there was nowhere for me my chest to go but in.
Yeah.
But went in, and you know when all the your breath leaves your body and doesn't want to
Sure.
come back?
Yeah.
That's how I felt. But the problem was I had to continue doing the next spot where I was kind of selling by the ropes, and Ray goes to put JBL in a position for the 619, but I was in the way, so we were both draped over the ropes. And then after that, after he got off, I slumped down to the ground, and Stewie, the cameraman, the handheld guy at ringside, Tom Stewart, says, "Jimmy, are you okay?" And I'm trying to tell him, "I can't
Yeah.
breathe." He goes, and I could hear him talking in his. He said, "I think Jimmy's got a problem here. I think he needs some help." I said, "No, no, it's okay." So I finished the match, and luckily that was the last day. I flew home, not knowing how much it hurt. Not how much it hurt, how injured I was, and it
Sure.
did hurt. And then I finally got checked out, and they said, you know, a long time afterwards, because I continued working after that. Like I went home for a couple of days and went back on the road, worked while I was in pain. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Then a little while later, I was getting checked out, and I had an X-ray done. And they go, "Hey, when did you fracture your sternum, your breastbone?" I said, "Pardon me?" They said, "You fractured your breastbone?" I said,
Did
"News
I?
to me."
You're the doctor. You tell me.
Yeah, exactly. So I found out after the fact. After I guess it had healed, but there was still the scarring on the bone there.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, so knocked out at WrestleMania 4. JBL took you out, and you didn't know for a while.
Hmm.
WrestleMania 4. So how about
Well,
WrestleMania?
nice potato from Animal, Road Warrior Animal, Buster
Okay.
Donovan right there.
Wow. Yeah. So refs do take a bit of a beating.
Yeah.
It's real. It's legit.
Yeah.
So let's talk about WrestleMania 24 though, and that's where
Hmm.
you were able to be in the main event there and the official for Edge and the Undertaker in that main event. Talk about how far in advance did you find out that you were going to be part of the main event for WrestleMania and what that moment meant for you?
Well, originally I wasn't scheduled for that match.
Okay.
So I didn't find out that I was going to work that match until about a week or two prior to WrestleMania. We were at TV, and Edge comes up to me in the locker room and says, "Jimmy, can I talk to you?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. What's going on?" He says, "Talking to Taker, and we want you to ref our match at WrestleMania." I said, "Oh, cool." He goes, "Are you cool with that?" I said, "What, you're asking me if I'm cool with it?" I said, Absolutely. Are you kidding
Yeah,
me?
for sure.
This is the main event of WrestleMania. Yeah, but I said I'm not scheduled for the match. He says, don't worry about it. It'll get changed. So I go, okay,
You do it.
go ahead. And then I ran into Taker. He said, did Edge talk to you? I said, yeah. He says, are you cool with it? I'm like, why are they asking me? Am I
Yeah.
cool with it? Of course
Am I
I
going to
am.
say no? Find someone
Yeah,
else?
yeah, exactly. But so he said, okay, cool. I said, yeah, I'll do my best, to be there for you guys. He said, we know you will. That's why we want you there. And I go, oh, geez, I better freaking be there then. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
Pressure's on.
the only thing I worried about was because stuff like that happens and it gets changed. And we
Yeah.
talked about this on our Reffing It Up podcast. Some of the other refs might think that I might have been the one politicking to get myself in that spot, which I didn't.
No.
But, that's neither here nor there. And I know the truth. Everybody else knows the truth.
Sure.
So no big deal. So um, it comes to the day before uh, WrestleMania. We're sitting in the green room. They're talking it over with the producer was Michael Hayes, PSAs,
Yep.
and they're going over the match, and I'm just sitting there listening to everything, going, "This is cool. Wow, this is awesome." And they said, and Michael says, "Well, Jimmy, we want to bump you in this match, but we want to bump you so we take you out of the match. So we need a second referee to come in." I said, "Yeah, okay, whatever you want." And Taker just said, "Are you okay with taking a big boot?" Again, they're asking me if I'm okay. I'm like, "Yeah, whatever you want to do. They're
Sure.
cool." I said, "Okay, all right, but we need a second referee to come down and do the false finish and then finish the match. And
Yeah.
who are we going to get?" Everybody's thinking, "Who are we going to get?" And it was like you couldn't have planned this. It was like a comedy show. Everybody looked at each other, looked around at each other, and it was almost at the same exact time. Everybody looked at each other and said, "Charles." He's, he's the only one who is in enough shape,
Yep.
who's cardiovascularly as astute as he was to make that run down to the ring
Yep.
without having to
The
stop
famous
halfway and
run.
catch his breath. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then, well, everybody was right because that iconic run was fantastic.
Oh, and he's still going to this day.
Oh yeah, God bless him.
How crazy is that? But to see someone that again talked about, the era, the attitude era, and all the times that you were a part of, he
Mhm.
was right there with you
Yep,
for most of it,
absolutely.
right? And
Yeah,
then he's still right there going through the eras that we're in right now. It
yeah.
takes a lot to be
And
as consistent as him.
he still works on the ring crew as well.
Love that.
And just yeah, so do I. It just shows you what a humble human being he is,
Yep.
grateful for everything. And you know what? As long as he can keep going, pal.
Yeah, we need one more run like that before he calls it quits. They
Mm.
got some good ramps out there to see if he still got it.
Oh, he still got it. I
He
think
still
he
got
does.
it.
I think so.
Pull off another run like that. So you mentioned the first ever Royal Rumble that you were a part of. What is the ref's role and maybe a little behind the scenes beforehand and during for a Royal Rumble match as crazy and long and a little all over the place as it can be? What is your role before and during for a match like that?
Just basically, again, going into the meeting of everyone there and getting the order of entrance and that sort of thing, and order of eliminations,
Okay.
and making sure that, again, trying to stay out of the way, but being close enough to be able to communicate with the talent. Okay, and count them down as far as times go,
Yeah.
count them down as far as the next entrant go, and then say, okay, so and so's got to get eliminated now. Like because they're telling us to tell them that. So,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
and that's the main thing. They understand that we're not telling them, we're not trying to, we're directing traffic basically is
Correct.
what we're
They
doing.
know you got
So
the earpiece and you're not telling them what to do, right?
right. So it's kind of it's a little more challenging in the sense that you got to wait till they get close to the ropes. And again, you don't want to be too loud because the handhelds can pick you up
For sure.
as well. So you try to be as discreet as possible.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, there's a lot going on when it comes to a Royal Rumble match. And Royal Rumble coming up, I have to ask you about this. You
Mm.
were in attendance for the famous Batista-John Cena Royal Rumble incident.
Hmm.
What did you see? What took place from your point of view, your perspective of that moment that so many people talk about to this day?
Well, there were two SmackDown refs, two Raw refs. Jack and Chad were on the Raw side, myself and Charles on the SmackDown side.
Yeah.
As per the meeting, they were going to be the final two participants. They would both go over the top together. Dave was supposed to hook the top rope. John would fall to the floor. Dave Batista wins the Royal Rumble to go on to WrestleMania. unfortunately, you have to imagine that late into the match, so much sweat and body oil and whatever
Yeah,
else these guys rub on their bodies and stuff like that
sure.
on that rope makes it kind of slick. And Dave did his best to hang on to it. He just couldn't. And you could probably, in rehearsal, attempt to do that 100 times to get them to land
Yeah,
simultaneously
yep.
the way they did, and they wouldn't be able, maybe once
Right.
they'd be able to do it. They couldn't recreate that if they tried.
No.
It was so perfect. So when they landed, Jack and Chad automatically went over to Dave to raise his hand because, as per, the sheet, he's going over.
Right. Right.
So we're just Charles and I are looking at each other and going, man, from our side, from that vantage point, it looked pretty close. Just chit-chatting back and forth.
Sure.
All of a sudden we get in our earpiece. Okay, SmackDown refs, go over and raise John Cena's hand and start bickering with the Raw refs. So we're raising his hand and we're going, he won. No, he won. No, Cena won. No, Batista won. So we're going back and forth, and they spilled back into the ring, and we went back in there and continued the argument back and forth. And while this is all going on, again, they're buzzing. We can hear it. They're not buzzing us because we're in the ring, but they're
Yeah.
buzzing the other refs. Go find Eric Bischoff and Teddy Long, the respective general managers. They want to send them out there to start arguing and then decide to restart the match. Couldn't find them for some. I don't know where they were. Can't tell you.
Sure.
All of a sudden, here comes. This wasn't Mr. McMahon. This was Vince hot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So as he's coming down, he's ripping off his blazer and he's throwing it down, and we're going, okay, ooh, he's hot. What's going on here? And he dives under the bottom rope. He goes to stand up. Next thing you know, he falls back on his ass with his legs straight out, and everybody's looking at each other like, what's going on? He's not getting up. And he's like, come here, goddammit. We're coming up closer, and he's trying to explain to us, he's giving us instructions. Okay, so we're going to restart the match and clear everybody out and let them do the deal. So go to the finish that they wanted originally. But as Vince slid out of the ring, a couple of guys tried to help him, and he was shooing everybody. Get away from me, goddammit. Vince, Mr. Proud, Mr. McMahon
For
wasn't
sure.
going to let anybody help him.
For sure.
He struggled and made his way to the back on his own, finding out later that he'd torn both his quads.
Wow.
And talking to people who know, like, again, I'm not a physician, so I'm not like, I've watched a lot of doctor shows, doesn't mean I
Yeah.
can diagnose anything, but
We'll all try though.
yeah, of course, like Dr. Google.
Yep.
Walking on two completely torn quads is next to impossible. And how he managed to do it, because of his pride or for whatever reason, he just didn't want to show any weakness.
Can be a strong thing. Pride can be a strong thing.
Yeah, and it sure was that day, huh? I'll tell you. And man, I'm still trying to figure out how you tear both your quads just doing this.
I was gonna say it looks
Yeah.
very basic.
Yeah.
It really did. You know what I mean? Like, and you're talking about someone who at that time was still active, right? Like he was still having matches here and there. So it's not like you're talking about some, old man that barely moves, anymore. Like it was a very basic move to tear both quads though.
I know, and he's the guy who's in the gym at 2 a.m.
Right.
And stuff like that. It's not like he was just this was his first foray into the ring, you know what I mean?
Sure. Sure. So you guys obviously had to change how that all went. Is there another, because again, you mentioned the earpiece and you have people talking to you. Is there another finish that, that maybe sticks out to you that kind of went off the script a little bit, that you had to wing it a little bit or change on the fly that people maybe didn't realize by watching, the first time around?
Oh, well, the cage match with Taker and Batista.
Okay.
That was one of them where the finish of the match was, obviously in a cage match, pinfall submission or climbing out of the cage, whoever gets out first and hits the floor with both feet.
Yeah.
Now, Taker and Batista were climbing down opposite sides of the cage, and they were doing a jump down. And we go to replay to see who wins. And in the replay, that shows them landing at the exact same time. So we declare it a draw. Therefore, The Undertaker retains the title. Unfortunately, it didn't go that way. This was another one where, again, like I said, trying to plan someone landing at the same time, it didn't work.
Right.
Because when they jumped, I can't remember who was early, but there was about, I want to say a 2-second delay between the drop,
Okay.
between both of them hitting.
Yeah.
And Mickey Henson and I, God bless him, rest in peace, had
Yes.
to play it off like, did he hit first, or did Taker hit first? Did Dave hit first? Then we went to the announce desk and asked them, Michael Cole to have him do the replay, and they did some magical editing in the truck to make it look like they did land at the same time.
Love
So,
it.
hats off to them for making it look that good.
You think Batista, he did it off script with Cena one time. He could nail it with Taker, right? You know what I mean?
That's the problem. It wasn't an accident this time.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. It's tough to, that's such a specific spot, like you mentioned, to try to pull off.
Mhm.
But the magic of editing, because it was a little further on, right? You're talking later in the 2000s, so they could pull off a little bit more than maybe they could have a few years prior to
And,
to make that work.
and it did help that it was a tape show instead of a live show. So,
Oh yeah,
like you said, yeah.
yeah. But SmackDown, they had to take advantage of that here and there, right? Not
Hmm.
not consistently. You want to keep it as consistent as possible with the live product.
Right.
So let's talk about a little bit what's going on. Coming up at the Royal Rumble, we talked about ladder matches. We have a ladder match coming up with Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes. Any specific memories for you with a ladder match and how that goes from your point of view as an official to be a part of a ladder match?
Oh, there's tons of them. I mean, like again, like you mentioned, they're TLC matches, but the trilogy with the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys, Matt and Bubba going through that stack of what was it, four tables,
Yeah. Yep.
getting pushed off that high ladder. Of course, the incredible WrestleMania 17 moment with Edge spearing Jeff Hardy while he was hanging from the.
Yep.
Oh, there's so many of them. There was a WrestleMania 23. This one a lot of people don't know about. That.
Happened in Detroit.
Yep, yeah,
Yep.
where Ric Flair took a nasty bump off one of the ladders,
Was a
and,
superplex, wasn't it?
and then we threw up the Magic X.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah. God, him
but
taking he's another one, as
but
old
here
as he was, kept going.
here's the thing though. Okay, the X was meant to be thrown up
Okay. Okay.
because again, full disclosure, they didn't want Rick going through that entire match.
Okay.
You know, he how many ladder matches has Ric Flair been in?
Right. And especially a 6-man ladder match or whatever it
Mhm.
was. That's a lot.
And you got guys like Edge and Jeff and all these guys doing all these crazy spots. Guess what? Rick, we got to find a creative way to get him out of there. Oh
Yep.
no. So people know what the X is now,
Right.
right?
Right. Again, people
So
learning.
let's use it to our advantage. And I can't tell you to this day how many people say, man, Ric Flair really got messed up in that match. And I'm like, mm-hmm.
Totally. Yeah.
Wink, wink, nudge,
Yeah,
nudge.
exactly. Exactly. Using again, that's where you kind of use the fact that fans learn the business as they watch and you use it to your favor. That's a
Right.
perfect way to do so.
Hmm.
So again, talking about what's going on currently, you mentioned you just visited when they were in Toronto this past year for Money in the Bank. Of course, you know Triple H very well. We're around for the entirety of his career, basically at least the prime and the full time of it. How do you feel about what like we were a couple years into his regime and his creativity that we're seeing from the WWE product? What are you seeing from that and how he is leading WWE to the heights that they're at right now?
Yeah, I think I love what he's doing. And one of the biggest things he's doing is he's giving guys a voice as well. He's letting them experiment. He's letting them kind of find themselves. Whereas before, for example, when he was more in charge of NXT
Yeah.
and NXT talent would go to the main roster, the man in charge would change things up.
Yep.
All of a sudden the character and the persona that we saw in NXT and what they were doing that worked in NXT was completely changed as
Sure.
opposed to trying it on the main roster. And
Yeah.
yes, I understand that the audience is not quite, there aren't as many eyes on that brand as there are on Raw and SmackDown, but still there's a vast number that still watch all three products.
Right.
And the people, if it's working there, chances are it's going to work on the main roster too. But he has a good vision. He has a good ear for listening to not only talent but listening to the people, to the majority of people. He's not catering to a niche audience. He's trying to cater to as large an audience as possible, and that might ruffle some people's feathers. Some
Of
fans
course.
might feel it's a shot at them. It's not a shot at anybody.
Yeah.
It's business. And the whole premise of the wrestling business is to get as many eyes on your product as possible and sell as many tickets as possible.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and I think he's doing a wonderful job. The talent are very happy under his regime. They're very comfortable working with him because there used to be an uneasiness when Vince was around. He had that aura about him where, you're afraid to screw up.
Yeah.
Now, if you make a mistake, you're going to get back to Gorilla, and you're not going to have somebody in the end go, come here, and give you that look and
Yep.
start blasting you. You're going to have somebody come talk to you and say, what happened there?
Right.
And talk to you
Right.
like a freaking human being.
Exactly. Right. Because
So,
yeah. And he gets it, and you could feel it through the product, right? And you mentioned it, the locker room and the vibe throughout the locker room, and it's translating to what we're seeing on TV in the ring, everywhere. Everyone just feels uplifted, and of course, it's translating to huge numbers, and it's translating to huge shows.
right.
I mean, and it just goes on and on. But I gotta ask, because Triple H is the man in charge. Did you ever take a sledgehammer shot back in the day from him?
No, thank
You
goodness.
never did.
No, thank goodness. I still
Earl
like those.
Hebner was the one. That
Yeah.
was his guy.
Ah, that's Earl, man. He could take those things. I was more like I'd rather take a stunner or something like that and have
Yeah.
more fun.
Did you ever take any type of chair or anything like that, or do you only take moves?
No, no, never a chair, never, thank goodness, because what we've learned today, because back
Of course,
then I know people say, well, what about back in the day? We didn't know what we know today,
for sure.
so, and you talk to a bunch of guys now, they say, why did you take all those chair shots back then? Because we didn't know, we were stupid.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know
and
what I
and
mean?
and people, of course, reacted to it, so we're gonna do it. Yeah,
Right.
it added to it. It definitely added to the product. Uh, Again, talking about the current product, and you watch it closely. Let's get some predictions for Royal Rumble coming up in Indianapolis, and let's start with the men's Royal Rumble match. I've said recently over the last couple of weeks, it feels like it could end up being one of the greatest Royal Rumbles we've seen just based off the names that we have and the stories that we have around this Royal Rumble. I compared it to the 2001 Royal Rumble, right? That was peak Attitude Era. You had Austin, you had Rock, you had all the biggest names in that Rumble match to go to WrestleMania. And it feels like we have that here. And the stories within it are just endless. Cena's final run, Roman's in it, Punk, Seth, Drew, everything like that. Men's Royal Rumble match. Who do you think should get this win and go on to WrestleMania?
Man, who I think should do it? That's a tough one because, like you said, this one's stacked, and you've got so many guys that you can make a valid case for
Yeah.
winning this Rumble. Obviously, Punk wanting to main event WrestleMania, so he wants to win the Rumble. John Cena, does he have one more last run in him? Could he be the one to break 17,
Yeah.
the 16 and make it 17? And Roman Reigns, of course. You know what? I'm going to take. I, I hate that this sounds obvious, but you got to go with I'm going to go 1A and 1B if I can, because
Okay,
this
go
one's
for
so
it.
hard to pick.
Sure.
1A for me is going to be CM Punk
Okay.
because he'll finally get his WrestleMania main event match.
Right. Right.
And if it doesn't happen through the Royal Rumble, he will get it. And I really would like to see it. Yes, cop out answer. I'd love to see John Cena.
Of course. A
I'd
lot
love
of
to
people
see John
do.
Cena. And I know people are saying, well, no, let the record stay intact. Let the record, you know, with all due respect to the great one, Ric Flair,
Yeah.
his title reigns were over several companies, his world title reigns.
Yes.
John Cena was a homegrown WWE,
Yeah.
WWF guy with
Yes.
16 world championships. Flair has won more than 16, let's be honest,
By
but
the way,
talking
yep.
about recognized ones, whatever the case may be.
Sure.
Let John Cena or a WWE homegrown talent have that record for WWE. Why not?
Yeah. I'm not against that. I wouldn't be surprised if they go that route at some point for Cena's final run. I would go with CM Punk. I'm with you with 1A with CM Punk. And I think it's a good way to get a CM Punk Seth Rollins rematch with the title involved at WrestleMania. WrestleMania is a little further back. It's at the end of April. So a little more time. There's time for Seth to get that title from Gunther and kind of tell that story. Because for me, you have Punk talking about this favor with Paul Heyman,
Right.
and that would automatically tie in Roman to this story, who also has a history with Seth Rollins, and you can kind of have a convoluted, in a good way, storytelling build to WrestleMania, while Roman also has a potential match maybe with The Rock, which a lot of people may think they may go that route this year. So I would go CM Punk for a rematch with Seth at WrestleMania. But I'm with you. Cena may break that record.
You know who had an interesting Bully Ray Dudley came up with an interesting scenario where he said that what if they have the Royal Rumble, they go through their thing, and then all of a sudden here comes number 31, since he's the final boss and can make his own rules.
Love that.
He enters at 31.
Love that.
He's making it up as he goes along. What the heck? And when I heard that, I said,
yeah,
you know what? I don't think we've ever seen something like that before.
No, we've seen a champion defend it. We've seen the boss get involved in himself. I don't think we've seen that. No, does he win it though? If he does that, he wins it. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
You go Rock Cody at WrestleMania?
You could do that.
You could go that route.
Still waiting for Roman, but hey.
That leaves something for Roman to do.
Since we're talking about it, I'm going to throw another interesting scenario.
Go for it.
Because it involves another match at the Royal Rumble.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people aren't seeing this, but what if Cody were to somehow be the first one to take those titles down? Now, it's technically a law, not Cody, KO.
Okay.
Kevin Owens. Technically a loss for Cody, but he didn't need a pin or anything like that.
No.
He lost it in a ladder match. And Kevin Owens is the one holding both titles, including the winged eagle belt, which I love that he brought it back, or they brought it back. But anyway,
love it.
And then Punk does win the Rumble, and you have Punk KO at WrestleMania.
You know what? I wouldn't hate that one bit. And Cody could go off. I mean, there's so many things with The Rock, with Roman, that he could do for WrestleMania. And speaking of that ladder match, and you brought it up, Kevin Owens is kind of getting in the ear of Sami Zayn to maybe help him. And I think there's legitimate reason as to why they could go and should go that route, to have Sami Zayn actually come through and help out Kevin Owens. A bit of a heel turn here. I wouldn't mind that one bit. I want to see more of a spark from Sami Zayn. And I only say that because we've seen Sami going back to his Johnny Knoxville match and being an obnoxious, fun heel with KO. And then, of course, that lovable babyface with the Bloodline. We haven't seen that from him the last couple of years, and I'm waiting for that spark. I thought him going back to the Bloodline would give him that spark, and it didn't for me. So maybe a heel turn with Kevin Owens could give him that spark. I wouldn't hate that if they went that route and Sami Zayn actually helped Kevin Owens get that win at the Rumble. I think it could do a lot for Sami.
Yeah, I think so too. And Sami, as everyone knows, he's one of the greatest baby faces from fighting underneath.
Yes.
He is so loved. And usually who makes your most hated heels are your most beloved baby faces.
For sure.
And everybody loves Sami.
And they would be heartbroken to see him, especially to Cody Rhodes, of all people, right? Yeah. The guy right now. So,
but there's also another player we haven't talked about. A certain Viper we haven't heard from in a long time.
And that's Cody's WrestleMania opponent for me. And to me, a title needs to be involved. I don't know that that's a Rumble win for Orton, but I definitely think that's for me, Orton, Cody, Rock, Roman, Punk, Seth for WrestleMania, at least on the men's side. I don't know that Roman and Rock need a title involved. That story tells itself.
No, because they've already established the Ulafala as the is the symbol for them. So.
Right. Well, and then, I mentioned Gunther dropping the title to Seth maybe before Mania. He's gotten in the face of a Goldberg, right? And they may go that route for Mania. And to me, that's another match that doesn't need a title. You know what I mean? I don't need Goldberg in the title picture in 2025. That match with Gunther, his final match, however you want to build it, that tells itself. So we put that title in the Seth Punk story for a big WrestleMania main event and let Gunther tell his own story with someone like Goldberg. I think that's a good, moment for Gunther that doesn't need a title.
That's the beauty of this. There's so many possibilities and so many viable possibilities that can work.
Legitimately.
That's great.
It's a good
problem to have.
It's a great problem to have. We saw at last year's WrestleMania how they kind of flipped the switch because of fan reaction and the options were there. So let's do it. And 2 nights of WrestleMania 2, that's a big game changer in terms of what they can do for main events and whatever it may be.
Right.
What about the women's side? The women's Royal Rumble match. To me, the build hasn't really been there. It really happened all in one night on SmackDown, right?
Mhm.
Everyone kind of declared on one night. But they mentioned Charlotte Flair is on her way back, and then we have a bunch of people declare for that. Who would you like to see win that women's Royal Rumble match?
I think right now, the way it was set up, it has to be Charlotte.
Yep.
It has to be Charlotte.
Yes.
She in one vignette, one video package, and this is not to discount any of the other ladies, but in that one video package, she looked like a bigger star than everybody.
I agree. She's telling there's no story around anyone
Mhm.
in the women's Royal Rumble right now. Right?
Right.
We mentioned the men's side, Roman and what he went through with The Rock, and if The Rock gets involved, Cena's
Mhm.
final run, and Seth Cody and Drew, or Seth Punk and Drew. Like, there's so much that you could do with that. And
Right.
it's the opposite for the women's side.
Mhm.
So, Charlotte coming back. I mean, Charlotte tells the story herself. And I also think Charlotte would be a perfect first big WrestleMania match for Tiffany Stratton, their champion. There's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah.
Right. So, and they're trying to make Tiffany this baby face. Charlotte comes back heel and takes out Tiffany for a WrestleMania match.
Mhm.
I'd be all for that. But Tiffany should retain in my mind.
No, I don't disagree there. I think that's a good call. I honestly do. Tiffany is special. Chelsea Green is special.
Very much so.
The women's division is very stacked, and we're not even talking about NXT with
Exactly. And we're seeing Bayley go down there with Roxanne, and we've seen
Yep.
her kind of on the main roster.
Mhm.
So I'm with you on Charlotte, unless there's a name that we don't know about yet to, get involved come the Rumble match as a surprise. I think Charlotte's really the only viable option right now. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that because Charlotte seems to always be in the title picture, but
Right.
it makes sense. This year, it makes sense.
Yes.
All right. One last question for you, and I'll let you get out of here. I so appreciate your time tonight.
No
Uh,
worries. No worries.
Again, long career in the WWE. You've seen a lot. You've seen a lot of moments. We are called Roar Around the Ring here. So I have to ask you before I let you go,
Okay.
what is the loudest roar or crowd reaction, pop, whatever you want to call it, that you have been in attendance for?
Easy.
Okay.
Easy.
Let's hear it.
Hollywood Hogan, Rock, WrestleMania 18.
Love that.
That was so insane. Going into that match, we knew everybody knew it was going to be special.
Yeah.
We didn't know how special, but we knew it was going to be special. And what I did was I snuck out before the match into the tech area because Mike Chioda had the match, and I wanted to just go out and check it out from there. I mean, they had everything from monitors that they pay attention to, but I wanted to feel the in the arena atmosphere.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when I went out there, I looked behind me and there's a bunch of guys lined up there watching also in the arena. They were expecting something special, but I don't know if they expected what they got. Because here they were, that everybody knows that iconic moment where they stood across the ring from each other, they stared each other down.
Yeah.
And they timed it so perfectly where they'd each look the opposite direction. They turned their heads slightly, they turned their heads the other way, like in unison. And it used to have a retractable roof on the Sky Dome. I don't know if it's still retractable or not.
I believe it is the Rogers Center.
So.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Now they call it the Rogers Center. It'll always be the Sky Dome to me.
Sure.
But literally, you felt the ground shake. You actually felt the ground shake.
Yeah.
That's how loud it was. It was insane. And the only other ones that would come close were maybe in Philly this year when Taker's gong hit, because everybody wanted to hear the glass break.
They did.
Even I was expecting the glass to break.
I did too.
I was thinking, okay, when that glass breaks, this is going to be incredible. When it went gong, again, as Pat Patterson used to say, the place went banana.
Yeah, and as much as people almost maybe wanted and preferred Austin at WrestleMania, no one expected Undertaker. And it made sense. He's got his history with obviously Rock, but Roman as well. So yeah, it was that unexpected feel. So, I mean, again, this day and age, social media, it's tough to pull off a surprise, but man, when they do, it is special every single time, especially the crowd sizes they have now, the stadiums they're in now. It's unreal. And you've seen a lot of it. Jimmy Korderas, 20 plus years in WWE, and of course, the first ever Royal Rumble as well. Reffing It Up podcast, Huge Pop Radio, hashtag Reffin' Rants. daily on X. Find it there. Jimmy, thank you so much for taking the time. Roar Around the Ring on YouTube at Roar Around the Ring. New episodes every week. Like and subscribe. We appreciate your support. Jimmy, I appreciate you. Royal Rumble this weekend. We'll talk to you guys very soon.